Hi everyone, welcome to Financial Friday. This it's probably two more Financial Fridays left before the end of the year, and today's topic is about spending less money. And I think what an opportune topic, especially considering that it is festive season coming up, and I think festive season is looming. Black Friday is around the corner. It's quite a big thing here in South Africa, and I think also in America. And so a lot of people obviously want to take advantage of specials, low prices, and often they tend to end up buying things that they don't need but want. And I guess, again, this topic is ideal for this time of the year to help you to identify potential ways to actually start saving or spending less money. One of my favorite authors in the money world is Robert Kiyosaki, and he wrote the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he says that it's not how much money you make, it's more about how much money you actually keep. And it's not only about the money that you keep, but what you do with that money that you keep. But that's a topic for another day. So today what we're going to do is we're going to focus on giving you some tips on how you can actually spend less money. Now, it's a very common problem, spending more than we earn. And it's not something that only happens here in South Africa, but research shows that it happens globally across the world. And this behavior has become even more prominent as a result of the ease at which we have access to additional funds in the form of credit. So we all know that, on the world of online shopping makes credit become a whole lot more easier. It's also easier to just be able to buy things at the touch of a button. And so that temptation is always there to spend and buy the things that we actually want first, and before we buy the things that we actually need. Now, why this topic is also important is because if you want to start shifting from a place of scarcity or a place of poverty or a place of not having achieved your financial goals that you've set out to achieve, it's important to start thinking or having a wealth mindset. And there's a few tools and secrets that the wealthy actually use to create their wealth and to maintain and manage their wealth. And it's not secrets as such, but it's habits and behaviors that they implement that we can also adopt if we want to have a wealth mindset. And one of those things, or one specific behavior, is spending less than what we actually earn. And this becomes especially important if we are not saving towards our financial goals, or if we are not saving adequately for our financial goals or our financial future. Now, there's one critical tool that people can use to make sure that they do actually spend less money, and it's common sense. It's a tool that most you would have probably heard about, and I'm here to remind you about that tool, and that's to have a budget in place. Now, I know that many people view budgeting as it's as a negative. They view it as something that's a limitation. It's something that controls them. It requires effort, and it almost feels constricting when you have some sort of a budget in place. But it does become a powerful tool because it does help you to identify where your money should be going. And what I actually do in my courses is I help to reframe the way we think about certain things. And generally, because people have this negativity towards the word budget, I've reframed it for people to start thinking of it in a more empowering manner. And that is to create a spending plan. So I don't really talk about having a budget as such, but I talk about creating a spending plan. And again, that just feels a little bit more empowering. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to drop it in the chat, and I'll try and pick up some of those questions as we go along. Or if not right now, then I will try and answer them at the end of the session. So creating a spending plan does have a more powerful or empowering meaning attached to it, and it does put you in the driving seat. So you decide where you want your money to go. So the first thing that you could possibly do is you could keep a spreadsheet, you could keep a notebook, a journal, or just a piece of a pen and paper, whatever works for you, whatever your preference is. I like to use an Excel spreadsheet, and if I tell you, I can go back to 2006 and tell you what my income was and what my expenses were. So I keep everything on one spreadsheet, and I'll be able to track and see what I've been spending on a monthly basis. So ideally, when you have a budget, you want to list all your fixed and variable expenses. Your fixed expenses are expenses that generally stay the same from month to month. And those are things like it could be your bond, your rent, your car payments, school fees, personal loans that you may have taken out, whatever those fixed things that you know you're going to have to pay every single month, and you know exactly how much you're going to be spending every single month. Variable expenses are things like things that will change from month to month. So it could be things like petrol. Maybe petrol isn't your petrol, the money you spend on petrol is not fixed. Maybe one month you're traveling twice a month you're doing more travel than you usually would. So again, you'd need to budget for more travel depending on your work plans or your holiday plans or whatever your travel plans look like. So your variable expenses also need to be included in your budget, and obviously you make allowance for those kind of things. If there's amounts that's going to be fluctuating, you can play around with those amounts. A budget is good for a few things. One, you know exactly where your money is going. Two, when you applying for a finance through a bank or credit facility, whether it's for a home loan or to further your studies, or to buy a vehicle, or even just to purchase a business, the banks will ask you for a copy of your income and expense statements. So it's always a good idea to have some sort of budget. And if you have it already documented, it's easy to then just replicate that and forward it onto the bank. Also, if you require funding, so if you're a business owner and you require funding, your investors, or again, the banks will ask you for proof of your income and expenses. So there's a number of reasons why income and expenses becomes a necessary tool to use. Another benefit of having a budget or a spending plan is when times get tough, you will be able to look at your plan and see what items need to be reduced or eliminated from your budget, or what can be cut down. And I'm finding that now, especially with the clients that I'm coaching, people are losing in certain instances, people are losing their jobs and they don't have an actual written budget in place. And part of getting your financial house in order is to make sure that you do have this information documented, because that is the first tool that you can use to start then reducing and identifying which potential expenses need to go. Another tool that is quite powerful in identifying where your money is going is to use a money journal. Now, I've developed a money journal as part of my program that helps people to track their expenses for at least 3 months. And this again becomes important because just looking at your bank statements could give you some clues as to where your money is going. But we also know that we don't always use our cards, which is linked to our bank statements. We might be using, more than one banking facility. We might be using credit cards or store cards to purchase certain things. And so we need to make sure that we have identified every single cent that is being spent in order to be able to have a proper or effective budget in place. So a money journal will allow you to keep track, and basically you can even use your phone or a notebook. I used to actually use my phone, and then I'd come home and I'd transfer the information into my spreadsheet. And I did this exercise for about 3 months just to identify spending habits and trends. You can thumbsuck figures and say, I'm spending this amount of money on groceries. But when you actually calculate it and you write down every single time you go to the store and you're buying food or groceries, and once you add it up at the end of the month, you realize that you're actually spending more than what you actually budgeted for. So a money journal is a great way to identify trends in spending. And it's little things that you could pick up. Like if you're spending money on a cappuccino every single day. And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with spending money on a cappuccino every single day if you are saving adequately for your future and your financial goals. But if you are not, then you definitely need to start looking at where that money is going. And again, I'm not saying don't drink cappuccinos, but make sure that you are saving towards your financial goals first. And if you are not, then you need to start cutting down on certain expenses. And maybe the cappuccino, instead of drinking a cup of cappuccino every single day, you treat yourself once a week or once a month. Another thing that you could do is also to look at your bank statements. Again, pull out 3 months of bank statements and analyze exactly where your money is going. And it's little things that you will pick up here. You might pick up a debit order that's going off your account that you weren't aware of. And sometimes it might be a small amount. But you add up all these small amounts and you calculate it over a period of time and you realize that that is money that could have been spent elsewhere. Also, you want to use your bank statements to review your bank charges. Now, if you're not on a bundle, as an example, you could be paying exorbitant bank charges. So just go and have a look at your bank charges and identify or speak to your bank and see if there's any options or reduced packages that you can use to try and reduce your bank charges. And that also becomes quite problematic or quite expensive if you have more than one bank account, if you're banking at different banks, as an example. Another thing to do is to analyze your credit card statements. And here you will be able to see what you are spending credit on. You can also look for charges on your bank, on your credit card statement. There might be things that you maybe did not authorize. Sometimes I'll pick up, payments that have gone off my account, which I'd forgotten about. And then I go back and I think, well, why am I actually paying for this? And, then I inquire about it and then I realize, okay, I actually don't need that anymore. So then I cancel it. Another tip that you can use to reduce your expenses or to spend less money is to review your insurance premiums, specifically your car and household insurance premiums. Usually people, stick to one company. Your vehicle is not an asset; it's a liability if it's not being used to generate an income. And so what you want to do is make sure that the value of that vehicle is obviously depreciating every year. You want to make sure that your insurance is covered for the depreciating amount every single year. Yeah. The other thing you want to do is on an annual basis, and it isn't a bit of an exercise, but once a year, get two to three different quotations from different companies. Make sure that you are comparing apples with apples, especially when it comes to car insurance. You want to make sure that if currently you're not paying excess on your current insurance and you move to another company, so let's repeat that. Currently, let's say you're paying an excess if something were to happen to your car, but you're getting a cheaper insurance premium, and you move to another insurance company and they're charging you a higher excess, then that and giving you a cheaper insurance premium, then it might not make sense for you in that case to move. So make sure that you are comparing apples with apples before you make any decisions to move insurance companies. Another thing to look at is also subscriptions. And so if you're paying for monthly subscriptions that you are no longer using, and I hate to say this because I'm such a lover of the gym, but if you're not using your gym subscription, it's costing you money. You're not using it. Look at canceling that subscription, and you can then use that money that you're saving towards other things. Eating out is a big thing. I see a lot of people spending money eating out, and also using Uber Eats to order food in. And again, when you do this exercise of the money journal, you realize how much money you are actually spending on food. That sometimes is sometimes the biggest expense that you might have. You could also look at how to cut out or reduce your petrol bill. So maybe not driving around a lot, working from home. I know a lot of us are doing that at the moment, or even carpooling. Carpooling is another idea to try and reduce your petrol expenses and also the carbon footprint. And then entertainment is the last one. Entertainment, we all know, we all want to, on the weekends with the upcoming holidays, people want to go out, they want to, have fun. And again, it's important to make sure that you have a budget allocated to eating out and try and stick to that budget. Here's a tool that you can use for specifically things like your grocery bill and your entertainment bill is identify an exact amount that you want to spend for the month. So let's say you want to spend a certain amount of money on food for the month. What you're going to do then is you'll break down that amount into 4 weeks. So if there's 4 weeks in the month, you'll break that down into 4 weeks. So let's say you've got $1,000 for food. You break it down into $250 per week. You can then further even divide it down to per day, a budget for each day, or even a budget for each meal. And you can use that system to actually make sure that you're managing your budget accordingly. So so these are just a few tips to help you get started. And hopefully you'll be able to use that to reduce your spending. And once you've identified where exactly your money is going, I think another thing that you need to do is to identify or distinguish between your needs and your wants. Today I met with a client and a client that just got retrenched. And I asked him to give me a list of his expenses and decide or tell me which is his needs and which is his wants. And I haven't had this conversation with him yet, but I said to him, there are some things that I noticed that was listed under needs, which is actually a want. And so next week I'm going to have that conversation with him to say, well, this is not a need, this is actually a want, and this is something that you need to start looking at reducing. So if your expenses are high, distinguish between your needs and your wants, then look at how do you reduce your wants first. If you still do not have enough to save towards your financial goals, or you're still feeling the pinch, then I would suggest you start also looking at reducing your needs. And sometimes those are the most difficult expenses to reduce, because it means things like relooking things like, do you need to be driving that car? Do you need to be living in the home that you are living in? Do your kids need to be going to the schools that they're going to? Especially if you are not able to afford those specific expenses. Oh, that's a good question. Do you recommend any apps to record expenses? There are quite a few out there. I mean, obviously familiar with some of them that are available in South Africa. I know we have a tool that links to your bank account, and it actually pulls out the information. And you can actually see every month, you can go online and you can see on the dashboard how much you spent on different categories. Sometimes your bank might also have a statement which tells you how much you spent on retail, how much you spent on specific expenses. But if you go onto your, I'm on Google Play Store. So if you go onto the Google Play Store, or even onto the iStore, I'm sure you'll be able to find budgeting apps that you can use to actually keep track of those expenses. Hopefully at some point in the future, I'll also build one. How much time can it take to lead my financials in the right direction? If I start putting it in place, all advice. So, and I always say this, financial wellness for me is an ongoing exercise. Even creating a spending plan is an ongoing exercise. And I mentioned that I can go back all the way to 2006 and tell you what I earned and what I spent my money on. And I think the important thing to remember is, and I always use this as an example, if you want to lose weight or if you want to stay fit, you're not going to just go to the gym for 2 months and then stop. You need to be training every day or 5 times a day. You need to be eating healthy. You need to, follow a specific training program, depending on what your goals are. And the minute you stop, it's very easy to slip back into old habits. So in exactly the same way, it's a mindset change. It's a lifestyle change. Achieving financial wellness is not a once-off event. It's not something you can just do and forget about it. It is important to get your financial house in order, and sometimes that might require a little bit more effort and a little bit more time. But once you've gotten over that hill, once you've actually gotten your financial house in order, it becomes a lot easier thereafter. It's the same like building habits. And I use this other analogy of tying your shoelace. When you were younger and your parents had to teach you how to tie your shoelace, and every day you would put your shoes on and they would help you to tie your shoelace. And eventually, you got so used to it that now when you put your shoes on, you don't think that you have to tie your shoelace. You just do it automatically. And so, saving as an example, it's a healthy habit that we need to start instilling in ourselves, in our children from a very young age. Every time you receive money, they need to be putting a certain percentage of that money away towards something that they need in the future. And that's how you start to create healthy habits. So eventually when they start working, they don't have to think twice about saving. And this is the problem with why we do not have a savings culture. This is why we do not save for things that we need in the future, like retirement, because no one ever taught us this and it wasn't a habit that was formed. And so it becomes a lot easier when we are doing these things, these healthy habits on a consistent basis. And once it becomes part of our subconscious, we don't have to think about it. It just becomes automatic. And that's where it requires absolutely no energy or no effort. And I think that is the key message here today, is that this is one of the reasons why budgeting is viewed with such negativity, because it requires effort. It's a difficult practice to start, and people don't want to do the difficult things. Change is hard. I think it was Robin Sharma that says, change is hard. It's messy. It's messy in the middle, but when you come out of it at the end, it's glamorous, and it's just, you have to go through that difficulty in order to be able to overcome and achieve the goals that you're setting out to achieve. Be that financial goals, life goals, whatever those goals are. It is always going to be difficult in the beginning. There's another thing that I remember, is that success is not easy. And if it was, everybody would be successful. So I think one of the questions you need to ask yourself is, what are your financial goals and what are you willing to do to make sure that you make your financial goals a reality? I think our time is up. So stay safe, everyone. And I hope you have a great weekend, and I'll see you again at the end of next month. Bye.